Good afternoon, kiddos. This is me, just giving you a little bit of help with your homework tonight. We are looking at finding the greatest common factor, or GCF, and least common multiple, or LCM, of a few numbers. And just to kind of refresh you, or if you need to see again what we did in class today, I'm going to be taking a look at number 2 from your homework. This guy's number 2. I'm going to be taking a look at number 6 from your homework. I'm going to be taking a look at number 12 from your homework. And I'm going to be taking a look at number 16 from your homework with you. So if you want, you can go ahead and take a look at those with me. So let's start here looking at the GCF of 16 and 36. And I'm going to show you both ways that you can find this, and you just need to pick the way that you like the most. So the first way I'm going to show you is making a list. So we're going to look at that first number here, that's 16, and the question you're going to ask yourself is, what numbers do I multiply together to make 16? And if you remember from what we did in class right away, it's always 1 and 16. And I like to spread my numbers apart like this so I know I'm kind of going in order. It helps me make sure I've got a complete list. Well, then my next number I want to ask, or the next number I guess I notice, is I know that 2 can go. And I know that 2 can go into 16, or I know that 2 is a factor of 16 because 16 is even. And every even number in the world can be divided by 2. So now the question is, what times 2 is 16? And that is 8. So now I want to know 3. So is there any number I can multiply by 3? Any whole number I can multiply by 3 to land on 16? And I can't, because if I go 3 times 5, that's 15, and 3 times 6 is 18. I skip right over. So 3 is not a factor of 16. Is there anything I can multiply 4 by to land on 16? And of course the answer to that is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So right there is my list of factors. Well, now I want to do the same thing for 36. I'm going to make a separate list. And right away, 1 and 36. So anyways, right away, 1 and 36, because every number has a factor of 1, and every number also has a factor of itself. Now I notice that 36 is even, so I know that I can divide that number by 2. So what times 2 is 36? Well, the answer to that is 18. So now I want to know if I can have 3. Is 3 a factor of 36? Well, the trick for 3's is you add together the digits of this number. So 3 plus 6 is 9. And because 9 would be divisible by 3, so is 36. So 3 is a factor of 36. The number I multiply 3 by to get to 36 is 12. So now I want to know if 4 can go. And kiddos, sometimes this list is easier if you are good with your basic math facts. So if you know right away, I know if I take 4 and I multiply it by 9, I'm going to get 36. It makes making these lists a little quicker. So then my next number I'm going to ask myself about is 5. And I know 5 is not a factor of 36 because 36 doesn't end with a 5 or a 0. So I'm going to ask myself about 6. And I know 6 times 6 is 36. So I only need to list that factor 1 time. So now I'm going to look at this list for the greatest number that appears on both of them. They both have a 1. They both have a 2. This guy has a 3. They both have a 4. And if you look down both lists, they don't have any other number in common. So the GCF is 4. Well, maybe you don't like the way of making the list. So let's look at finding that a different way, and you can just pick the one that you like best. So here I'm going to write those two numbers, 16 and 36. And if you remember what we did in class, we kind of put a little bar underneath them to separate it from the rest of our workspace. And when I look here at 16 and 36, I notice both of those numbers are even. So I'm going to divide by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. I'm going to write that 8 right below that 16. 36 divided by 2 is 18. Well, if you look at both of those numbers, they're still both even. So I'm going to factor out or divide both of those numbers by 2 again. And the trick right here, you have to be able to divide both of these numbers by the same thing. Otherwise, this way won't work. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now, when I look here at 4 and 9, they don't share another common factor other than 1. And dividing by 1 doesn't really do anything. So I'm done. And we can find the GCF. The GCF is on the left. Remember, we marked it with that little G? By multiplying the numbers that are on the left that I factored out. And 2 times 2 is 4. So the GCF is 4. Now, either way you solve it, you get 4 as the answer. So you need to pick the way that works better for you. Let's do the same thing here, looking at 35 and 63. Again, I'm going to, this way this time I'll start over here. I'll start with the sled. 35, 63. Now, when I look at both of these numbers, these are not both even. I can't divide them both by 2. So now I'm going to ask myself if I can divide by 3. Well, 3 plus 5 is 8, and I can't divide 8 by 3, so I can't divide this by 3. I could divide 63 by 3, but I can't do it to both. I know I can't divide either one of these numbers by 4 because I can't divide either one of these numbers by 2. So there's no way 4 is going to work. I could only divide this guy by 5 because he ends in a 5. I can't divide 63 by 5 evenly. Now, if we look at our divisibility, that checklist that you have in your notes, the only way that we can divide those numbers by 6 is if we can divide by 2 and 3. And here we can't divide them both by either of those. So 6 won't work either. So now I'm going to 7. Well, I know I can divide both of these numbers by 7. So I'm going to do my little sled. I'm going to factor out a 7. 35 divided by 7 is 5. 63 divided by 7 is 9. So here, with 5 and 9, I can't divide these by anything other than 1. They don't share any other common factors. So here, the GCF is on the left. It's only 7. So now let's go ahead and make the list. If I take my number 35, I've got 1 and 35. I know 2 won't go. I know 3 can't go. 4 can't. I know 5 can go. And 5 is a factor of 35 along with 7, because 5 times 7 is 35. Well, now let's look at 63. I've got 1 and 63. I know 2 is not a factor because it's not even. 3 is a factor because 6 plus 3 is 9. So the number that I need to multiply 3 by to get to 63 is 21. I know 4 can't go, I know 5 can't go, I know 6 won't go because 2 and 3 aren't both a factor. I know 7 can go if I pair it with a 9. When I look at both of these lists, the largest number on both lists is a 7, so the GCF is a 7, no matter how you solve it. Okay, well now let's look at finding the LCM. And again, we're going to look at 2 approaches. So our first approach here with 12 and 18, we're going to make a list. So I'm going to skip count by 12s. 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72. All right, well now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to skip count by 18s, and if I have a number in common, I can stop. If I don't, I'm going to need to keep going. 18 can kind of be a little tricky to skip count by. So I'm going to say 18. I know next I have 36. I know next I have 54. Oh, and hey, look. Here's my least common multiple. If I skip count by 18 and I skip count by 12, the first number I land on for both of those are 36. Well, I can also use this strategy to find the least common multiple. So here are my 12 and my 18. Right away I notice both of these numbers are even, and that's always a good first question to ask yourself, because if they're even, you can always divide by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Okay, so now I'm left with 6 and 9. 6 and 9 are not both even. I can't cut them in half, but I can divide both of these numbers by 3. So I'm going to factor out a 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And here we have those little next door neighbors, right? 2 and 3. They're never going to share a common factor other than 1. So I know I'm done. Now, if you remember from what we did in class, the GCF is on the left. So, but that's not the question we're trying to answer. Right now we're looking for the LCM. And the LCM is all of them. So all of those numbers to the left and those numbers here along the bottom, if we multiply those numbers together, 2 times 3 times 2 times 3, we should get 36. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. And 12 times 3 is 36. So there we go. Both ways we solved this problem, we got 36 as the answer. Last but not least, let's take a look at finding the least common multiple of 9 and 24. So again, I'm going to start over here this time. I'm going to start with the sled. 9 and 24, because I don't really know if I want to skip count by 24. We'll see. So if I look at 9 and 24, they're not both even, so I can't cut them both in half. But I know I can divide both of these numbers by 3. If I divide 9 by 3, I get 3. When I divide 24 by 3, I get 8. So here, 3 and 8, there's nothing I can divide these numbers by other than 1. They don't share a factor. So again, the GCF is on the left, but that's not what we're solving. We're solving for the LCM, and the LCM is all of them. So when you find the product of those three numbers, 3 times 3 times 8, well, 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 8 is 72. The GCF is 72. And we'll find the same thing if we make our list. When I come over here and I skip count by 9s, I have 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72. So now let's see about if I skip count by 24s. Got 24, 48, plus another 24 is 72. So there's that number again, and it's the first number. It's the first number that shows up on both lists. So no matter how you solve it, you get the same answer. Hopefully that helps you with your homework. See you tomorrow.